And now it's Deborah Kobylt Live.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us today on Deborah Kobylt Live. I'm your host, Deborah Zara Kobylt, and joining me today is Dr. Bernard Beitman, who wrote this truly fascinating book, Meaningful Coincidences, How and Why Synchronicity and Serendipity Happen. But first of all, welcome. Welcome to the show, Doctor.
Thank you, Deborah. Pleasure to be here. Glad to talk with you yesterday and today.
Yeah, but let's face it, how many of us, this one happens to me all the time, and I mean all the time. I go to pick up the phone to call a friend of mine, haven't talked to her in 2 years, 3 years. She's over in Italy. I pick up the phone, and there she is calling me. It's like, whoa, is there something telepathic going on? Is that a coincidence? And those are always the types of questions that I ask myself. And of course, I find myself with no answers until I read your book, which was terrific because it really got me thinking about stuff like that that happens to all of us, right, every day. So talk to us about the book. Talk to us about what happened to me. And go ahead.
Well, let's start with what happened to you, because that is one of the most common coincidences that we found in doing the coincidence research. I developed the Weird Coincidence Survey to really ask the question, do people experience a lot of coincidences out there, not just hearing stories, and trying to be able to get some data that said, yes, these are the kinds of coincidences people regularly experience. And that was one of the top four, thinking of somebody especially fun when you haven't thought about them for a while or haven't contacted them for a while, and then they're right there on the phone. Now, the frequency of that will vary with different people about how that happens, but it is reported in our survey as one of the most common. Now, you ask, how does that happen? Or you might say, what are the odds of that? People say that. And what I try to say, or it's woo woo.
Right.
So we get into it when it happens that much to you, Deborah. You know there's something going on. You just don't know what it is, and that's what I come up with is trying to say what it might be. And the name for what you are doing is called telepathy.
Mm.
And Rupert Sheldrake has done research with telephone telepathy, which more controlled than your particular individual sequence of experiments, a blind group and an active group. And he could show that people guessed who was calling with a higher frequency than would be probable. Now, the trouble with this is that modern science says, no, can't happen. It's all random. It's all random, says modern science. And what you are doing with talking with me and what you are doing in your own experience is saying, maybe the way they're telling me reality works ain't the way it works. Maybe we can do telepathy. So in the latter part of the book, I try to explain how telepathy might take place.
Now, you brought up science. I'd like to add, if you don't mind telling our audience some of your credits. I mean, you are a well-researched doctor. You are a psychiatrist. In fact, I love how you preface the book. Please allow me to introduce myself. I am a psychiatrist. I am paid to distinguish between reality and crazy. I walk that line in my life and in this book. I love that. But so much in this book is based on research and based on science. Would you tell our audience about that?
Well, it's a scientific way of thinking. And any way, any new science, and I'm trying to begin a new science, starts with adequate description. You got to know what you're talking about. So a lot of people have a coincidence or a bunch of them. They say, no, it's all random. Oh, no, it's all fate or God. Well, you've got to look in detail at the coincidence. You have to see how many are like that. For example, your experience, other people have. Well, you accumulate cases like that, and you have to say, Deborah is like a lot of people and has experiences like this. So are we going to say that's all random? No, we can't. I did enough research in psychopharmacology to know that once you get a couple of hits with somebody where a drug helps somebody in a way you wouldn't expect, that becomes a case series. And that case series can indicate that there might be something else going on. So you do more controlled research. So what I'm doing is setting this up by describing the field and then saying, let's think about how to explain it.
You talk in your book about the types of coincidences.
I do.
Would you? Yes, you
I
do.
do. I do.
Would you tell our audience about that? Because we've all had them. but none of us can explain it. And I like, again, that you've tried to put science into this to explain there really are no coincidences, right? There's a bigger reason, a bigger purpose to all this. Would you explain?
I like to think so, but I also like to think there's mystery. Uh, there may be a bigger purpose, and I mean, that's not exact. I'll get to what you just said, but I think coincidences can help people find their purpose in life.
Yes.
I think they are ways of showing us a pathway to what we should be doing and need to be doing on this planet for ourselves and for other people. Well, let's just say that is one ultimate purpose. I think that they can serve us. But let's talk about the four kinds of coincidences.
Can I stop you? Could you elaborate on that a little bit? How coincidences, and then we'll get to that. Coincidences can help us find our purpose. Could you be more clear with our audience? What is that?
They make us feel guided sometimes, as if there's some. You're in your position. You've had enough coincidences happen in your life to like get you to where you are, and you say, "Well, how did that happen?" Or I will take the opportunity that this offers me, this unexpected collision of two different events, me meeting somebody in a strange place or in a strange circumstance who offers something that might be useful to you, much like the reporter and her friends in the restaurant. That was unexpected. The reporter has a job. Now, that sort of thing happens with some regularity. The key thing being, and I think you are an adventurer, Deborah, if I would guess correctly.
Definitely.
Well, you've got to then act on the opportunity. Coincidences present opportunities. So if you're willing to act on them, you can open another door and find out yet even more expansively what you are here to do, to find out what your purpose here in life might be.
You know what I'd like to get to, those folks, because I talk about this type of stuff all the time, but a lot of people just don't believe in any of it. They're like, okay, so you keep running into the same guy on the train. So what? And then the conversation goes dead. That's always very difficult for me because I think, no, there's something else there. Let's talk about it. What do you do with folks like that? You just sort of let it be?
Well, if the person is telling you the same story, let's assume they're telling you the story for a reason. They're maybe a little perplexed by that, maybe. And you can ask, well, what do you think that means to you that you keep running into this guy? And they cannot answer that, but you can ask the question. Not right. Do you think there's something going on? No, you want to be you want to ask them what about the details of this guy? But the best one you can ask is, have you asked him anything about himself? Because there may be a message there, and there may not be. Let's keep that in mind. But the curiosity to wonder about something that's a low probability event, running into the same person on the train all the time, you begin to say, well, I don't know, maybe I'll just ask that person, like, who are you, and see what's there.
Right. But I'm just saying, sometimes people don't even believe in any of this, right? They're just going to say, so what? It's the coincidence, and just leave it there. I'm just often amazed that, as you said, the word curiosity. I think in order to talk about coincidences and telepathy and all that stuff, you just need to be a little curious about it, right? Just open yourself up to it, to see where it would lead you, as you said yourself, perhaps to one's purpose, which is really very, very valuable. All right, let's get into those types of coincidences, and then I also want to talk about what happened in your life, in your early life, certain coincidences that had a real impact on you.
The four types of coincidences that I have identified, and not just me, but put together, are synchronicity, serendipity, seriality, and simulpathity. Now, I'm going to illustrate seriality by showing you that those four words each begin with an S and end in an ITY. Serendipity, simulpathity, synchronicity, seriality, SITY. That is seriality. When you find the same thing repeated that everybody can see. It's not just in my mind. or your mind,
Mm.
we can see it. So that's a series of coincidences. Somebody calls those, say, monkeys. So sometimes it's running into that same person all the time that you just described. There's some series going on. So that's one kind. Another kind that's really common to the term used in the United States is synchronicity. And synchronicity by Jungians in the strictest terms means helping you with spiritual, interpersonal, or psychological development. And they do. I find there's research to show that synchronicity helps psychotherapy proceed. So synchronicity can be helpful in personal ways like that, but people use that word for a lot of other meaningful coincidences, like serendipity. Now, what's serendipity? Serendipity could be summarized as happy accidents, like you find something by accident that you might have been looking for but found it in a weird way, or found something that you weren't looking for, but there it was, and you recognized that it was useful to you. So happy accidents. Medical discoveries, particularly drug service discoveries, have been done this way for a long time. And
go ahead.
And the final one is simulpathity, but we can get to that.
You and I spoke off camera a little bit about all of this, and we talked about that film, The Truman Show. Remember? Like, are people watching us in our lives, go through our lives? Is someone pulling a string and then all of a sudden something happens? These are things I think about all the time as well. In other words, how do coincidences fit into our lives, not just our lives, rather, but the world, the earth, and way beyond, right? The universe. Like, where's the connection in all of that through your studies and your research?
Well, I'm more primitive than you are, Deborah. I'm staying right here on Earth because the universe is too big for me to be able to conceptualize. Not that I don't think there's stuff going on out there, I do, but there's enough confusion and craziness going on right here, and interesting, mysterious things that I tend to focus on right here. So that's where I try to talk about having a mental atmosphere, that our minds are in a mental atmosphere, illustrated by simultaneous independent discoveries, that people find the same thing at the same time without having had contact with each other. In my book, you'll see the story of Dennis the Menace appearing both in England and in the United States on March 12, 1951, and the two cartoonists didn't know each other and never had contact with each other. Dennis the Menace, two dogs, trouble, boys who got into trouble. So that's a simple version of something that's quite common. So we share a mind with each other. We are not just separate, as we are taught to think, but we are like islands that are attached to the surface, the earth underneath, where we are connected with each other. The island sticks up, but we are connected with each other. And coincidences illustrate these, they illuminate the hidden currents that connect and unite us.
Yeah. You just sort of got me mesmerized for a second. I was visualizing what you were saying. And I know that you talk about this in your practice with people, right? How do you guide people when they talk to you in your office, for example? And how do you incorporate coincidences into your work?
Again, it depends on how open people are to the coincidences and the kinds of experiences they have. Yesterday, a patient of mine reported this experience of thinking a lot about her ex-boyfriend, and suddenly he was back in there and she was missing him, and then she goes on Facebook and sees he just got married. So she had been thinking about it, but not this intensely, and so she somehow picked up that he was getting married to the woman that he went to after her. So she was emotionally involved with that, but I tried to suggest to her that was telepathic. She doesn't want to hear it. Another guy has somebody call him and say, he knows her kind of, and she says, I just heard from your grandmother, and she wants me to give you a message. His grandmother had died. So he thought I was crazy, but he told her something about your mother is sorry for how she treated you. Well, he didn't believe it. He didn't believe it. So the woman calls back again and says, your grandmother wanted me to tell you that at age 4, you hated wearing white socks to church. And only he and his grandmother knew that. So he became a little more interested. And then he ran into a woman who was in his town and hadn't really known her before. And they started having a lot of coincidences, particularly about Etta James and a song called At Last. He loved that song. And that song followed him with her until one day he left her at 6 a.m. going to work, and he heard again Etta James singing At Last. He at last had found the love of his life. Now,
Wow.
what I helped him do, who's pretty rational, is accept that these things happen, and made him not weirded out by it, so he could be more involved with her. And now they're married and they have a beautiful, beautiful relationship. But he needed me to say, it's okay, this stuff happens.
I had a really weird thing happen about a year ago, right? My mom had passed some time ago, and in the middle of the night, the music came and it was so loud, it woke me up. And I'm telling you, it did wake me up. It was not a dream. And it was the kind of music that she would play when I was a little kid. And it was loud. And I looked up and I saw her. I mean, I don't have these dreams. I have not had it before. I haven't had it since. And she said to me, this is the only way I can communicate to you. Everything's going to be okay. I was in shock. And it was music like that she listened to as a kid, like Winchester Cathedral, or like I'm talking way back. Right? Come on. Who listens to that? Right. Or Sinatra singing a duet with his daughter. I mean, I don't listen to that. I haven't listened to that. It's not what well, this was weird. My husband, I told him about it, and he went out that morning and he was working out with a guy that, I don't know, they play a lot of rap music, right? Out of nowhere, the same song came up. And it's like, oh, come on. And then I was somewhere eating lunch and it was on somebody's ringtone. I mean, come on. And I'm like, hello, are you trying to tell me something? Or is that just some super weird coincidence? It has not happened before and it has not happened since. What's that?
It's a super weird coincidence. It's not an either or thing, though.
Yeah.
A key thing for our audience to know is that once you have an explanation for a coincidence, it's no longer a coincidence.
Ah. Oh.
The definition of coincidence involves a possible explanation, not an explanation. So when you know what happened, when you know how it happened, it's not. But what you are describing, so many people have told that same kind of story. And that's what's important for me to be able to get across to the people watching and listening to us. What you described, as weird as it is generally speaking not that weird, in the fact that people have experiences of a loved one communicating, it appears, from the other side.
I don't know. I didn't know what to say about it. I still don't know what to say about it. It's there. It was pleasant. And that's where I've decided to leave it. Right. And as you said, sometimes there's really no answer to it. It is what it is. Right.
You have to take, as we are doing now, Deborah's way of thinking about it. But you hear more stories like that, you're going to say, well, maybe this is a suggestion that she is communicating to me.
I've decided to take it that way, and it's a very pleasant feeling, right? And that's how it is in my mind. That's how I decided to view it. Let's talk about you. You had a few incidences in your early life. The dog, the choking. You want to just briefly tell our audience, some of what sort of happened in your own life to sort of lead you also to this kind of work?
Yeah, this kind of work doesn't come from just reading about it someplace. It happens.
No, it happens. That's right.
It happens. And then if you're curious the way I am, like, what is going on around here?
Right.
They ain't telling me. So I went to good schools, Yale and Stanford and Swarthmore College, and they didn't tell me some of this stuff. So like,
nope.
What is this? But the first one that I remember was not really one that made me wonder. It made me just so very, very happy. it just was so important to me. As I came home one day from school when I was 8 or 9, and said, "Hey, Ma, where's Snapper?" That was the name of my dog, our dog. And she said, "I don't know." And I
Oops.
said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa." She said, "Go to the police station. Maybe they know." What an answer. So one of the ways to increase coincidence is to do something out of the ordinary, by the way. I mean, so this was out of the ordinary. I'd never gone across the big road near my elementary school, never done it. Went across the big road, parked my bike, went up stairs, big door. I'm 9, big desk, look up, big policeman.
Yeah.
And I say, "Have you seen my dog?" And he said, "Sorry, son, haven't seen your dog." And I started crying. And
Oh.
I start crying when I tell that part of the story now, because I was devastated. I needed him, and they didn't know where he was. So I went back down the stairs and got back on my bike, and instead of going across the street, I was just crying a lot, and went along the street. And up ahead was a dog walking the way Snapper walks, 2 feet, but his back feet were were not straight ahead of him. He was walking like that. So I said, "That's
Hmm.
Snapper's walk," and it was Snapper. And
Yeah.
and I was he jumps up on my leg, and I think he said, without being able to bark it, I think he said, "Where have you been?" That's what I always thought he said. He made 4 turns to get there. I made 1.
But
And
what's interesting is, as such a young person, how you were so inquisitive. You know, most people would have said, "Ah, I found the dog," but you really read into what was happening.
because it was so wonderful and so
Yeah.
magical and so impossible to happen.
Hmm.
It was a miracle for me. It was really a miracle for an 8, 9-year-old boy to find his dog who never was going to come back again, I thought.
Yeah.
So it was a miracle that stayed with me, but I only remember it. Didn't really use it as something to study until I started having a lot more coincidences after that.
Hmm. Interesting. What about the other incident you told me about, the choking story? I found that quite fascinating.
Well, again, that was a very emotional one. Um, I
Gosh,
had a
I'm just
lot.
going to get you crying on this show the whole time. But go
Uh,
ahead. That's a good thing.
this one doesn't as much for some reason that we could try to talk about, but my dog really does. My father and I weren't as close as my dog and I were, just to be
Mm.
too specific about it.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember I had a lot of coincidences on the football field, on the baseball field, uh, running for student council. There was a lot of stuff, a lot of coincidences that took place between age 9 and now age 31 that I'll tell this story. When I was in San Francisco, 1973, I was standing at a sink, a Victorian house in the Fillmore district, in one of those painted lady houses that I was partly renting. Those are such neat houses, Victorians. And I was in the kitchen and I was choking and I couldn't stop choking. It was something seemed to be caught in my throat. I didn't eat anything. Just no way that I could understand anything was in there. And I never choked like that before or since. It went on, it seemed like a long time. I don't know how
Mm.
long. I just needed to, I couldn't get it. It was in my throat. I couldn't get it out. And that was 11 p.m. San Francisco time on February 26th, 1973. And the next day, my brother called me. My father had been in the hospital, but he had been apparently recovering. But at 2 a.m. on February 27th in Wilmington, Delaware, my father died
Mm.
choking on blood in his throat. So when I was choking, he was choking. When he was choking, I was choking. This is the experience of the pain of a loved one at a distance, which I call simulpathity now. And to add to it, add to the fun of this, if you will, February 27th is my birthday.
Mm.
So he died 2 hours into my birthday, Wellington time. And what I got from that was remember me. And I am remembering
Yeah.
him. I am remembering him by telling you this story.
Wow, you are. That's actually a beautiful story and a beautiful way to look at something happening, the end of one's life, you know.
Thank you.
That's really, really beautiful. I also want to talk about the Coincidence Project. Can you talk to us about that, about the Coincidence Project? What is that? And how can people get more involved? How can they become more intuitive, if you will, about their own coincidences, more curious?
Well, by becoming involved with the Coincidence Project, there's a way to do that, because what we do with the Coincidence Project is encourage people to tell each other coincidence stories.
Oh,
I mean, you have people who tell you coincidence stories and don't want to talk about it particularly, but there are people who are curious about them and want to talk with others about them because they run into the same problem you run into. That some people don't want to hear it. So you know very well from your time in the media that once an idea gets out there, people start picking it up. It becomes a normal way of thinking. Once it was weird at one time, the more people talking about it, the more it becomes an acceptable idea. So we are doing that same thing with the Coincidence Project, and you're helping with this by having me on your show, is to be able to make coincidences a more regular part of everybody's life, because they are, and to be acknowledged that they are part of everybody's life. And
right.
that's what we are doing. And you can get involved with the Coincidence Project by going to coincider.com. That's my email. That's my website. But we are launching the Coincidence Project website in a month or two, and that will be a place to go. Again, the Coincidence Project will get you there.
Mm. Before I let you go, talk to us about the practicality. What are the practical uses of coincidences in our everyday life?
Very practical. I mean, you heard the story of how I got an article published to be published in the LA Times. They help things to happen. So they can help you progress in your life. You and your producer have been in the right place at the right time before. And that's what coincidences tell us happens. You're at the right place at the right time. They also help with the grieving process. You can see the research referenced in my book about how they help
Yeah.
with grieving, much like the way you heard the music of your mother. There are other ways flowers will do that, but music is a big one. They can help solidify interpersonal relationships, and yet more interestingly, start interpersonal relationships. A very popular post in my Psychology Today blog is is it meant to be? Coincidences suggest it's meant to be. Be careful, be careful, because they bring you together, but then you got to work the relationship. You got to figure out
Right.
how it works. And I've talked to people who've had dramatic comings together with coincidences, didn't do anything about working on the relationship, and it's over. You got to work on the
Right.
relationship.
Right. But it goes back to that word curiosity. It goes back to a lot of words, even just singular words. And if we just open our minds up to that, um, that's a really powerful thing. That's a really powerful thing. Anything you want to tell our audience? There's so much to talk about in this book, honestly. And I even footnoted some of the chapters in particular, the science of coincidences. You also talk about some very puzzling cases: the burning lungs, the balloon, the silent radio. But I'm going to let people pick up the book to read that themselves. But anything you want to tell our audience to tease them a little bit, to get them a little more curious about the coincidences in their lives.
That's the main purpose of the book, is to let you know that they happen. You're not the only one. To think about joining other people and talking about them, but to get a mindset that tells you these are normal parts of everyday life. They're normal parts of everyday life. Let's just talk about them with each other and try to understand how they're useful to you and how they sometimes help explain what's going on in this mysterious universe of ours.
Yeah, I got you to say the word universe. So you were saying earlier how you like to stay planted on Earth. I'm just being silly with you.
No, I want you to know that I think there's something else going on around here. There's a higher intelligence beyond the psychosphere. I feel it. I know it. I'm trying to study it. In a way, I'm trying to know the mind of God by doing this. But
Yeah,
I'm focusing on what's in front of me, the
yeah.
psychosphere and these coincidences. But it expands much further than that. But my job here is let's look at what's going on here on Earth and try to understand and use it.
Yeah. Well, you'd be a great guy to have at the dinner table. I'm sure you're terrific at a cocktail party because you could just keep going. I mean, these are the kind of conversations that you can have endlessly and then pick them up in the morning, don't you think? At least to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But the place that I do something like that is on the dance floor where you don't talk. I mean,
Ah,
I love conscious dance and I go twice a week on the weekends. And the energy and the vibes and the stuff, I know I'm putting stuff out and I'm getting stuff in. And it's a little bit like a conversation without words. It's an energy conversation and it's wonderful.
that's pretty cool. So you like to dance. What kind of music?
It's um, it's all instrumental and relatively starts slowly, and it's all kinds of different stuff. Uh, I'm glad when they do some oldies like La Mer, like somewhere beyond the sea, she's there waiting for me. I like when they do that, even if it's up, so I can go pretend like I'm singing it on the dance floor and doing the motions of it. And then some of it is a lot of like what might be called new age sounds or from India sounds, but the rhythms start off slowly, then hit
Mm,
a crescendo, and then drop off towards the end.
mm. Very interesting guy you are, Dr. Bernard Beitman. No, you really are. Very,
Well,
very
thank you.
fascinating. And this is a terrific book, people. Please pick it up. Meaningful Coincidences, How and Why Synchronicity and Serendipity Happen. Please check out the Coincidence Project and anything else that you'd like to tell our audience before we let you go.
Yeah, I'm so glad you appreciate what I'm talking about, Deborah. I really do appreciate because you do appreciate it. I mean, I can really feel it and, as well as see it. It's really nice. Toward the
Yeah,
end of the book, I have a personal postscript um, which
yeah,
addresses the a problem of humanity and Earth. And
yeah.
I'm trying to suggest that meaningful coincidences can help unite us into a collective human organism, that you find your own purpose, you find out how you relate to other people and with your purpose. And let's stop destroying each other and our planet and our animals and our plants. And let's see if we can make this the heaven on earth that I think we have here to do.
That's beautiful. And that was one of the most poignant parts of the book. So thank you again for bringing that up. That's very, very important. Important to get out of this book that there's a reason for all of this. And perhaps it's so we can make where we're living better in many, many ways. So thank you so much for bringing that up to me and to our audience, Dr. Bernard Beitman. Please pick up the book and, check out the website too, right? Um, and I know that you've got a show that you also do. I mean, you're sort of everywhere, right?
I've got a podcast,
Yeah.
and it would really be fun to have you on the podcast if you had the time.
Oh, I'd
Uh,
love to.
oh,
Love to.
I'll
I
send you
love
an email.
being on other people. I love being on other people's podcasts.
Oh, what?
My whole story is just is also unique, like everybody's is. So sure, that'd be great.
Because then we could really just do you with my kind of, because you kind of get into it. So, okay, I'll send you a time probably in February, see if you can do it.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and and also, I'm going to make sure that you get an invitation to the Coincidence Cafe because
Oh,
expressed interest in that too. And it'd be great to have you come. And I'd like to establish brick and mortar coincidence cafes in different towns, cities in the country. And at the Coincidence Cafe, you can get 4 kinds of tea: serendipity, synchronicity, seriality, and simulpathity. As a play, and then I'm trying to imagine what it would be like in there, how we'd group people and those stuff that we'd be selling. And it's just it's an idea for you to percolate around because you were a big percolator of ideas, I can tell.
yeah. I love that. I love the idea. I think it's fantastic. It get a collection of people from everywhere to be involved in this. That is something I'm interested in. So reach out to me about that as well and text me. All right, very good. Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor. Wonderful, wonderful speaking to you. Meaningful coincidences, so much to think about and ask. So pick up the book, and you can find our show, Deborah Kobylt, live on YouTube, on Facebook, and then, of course, all audio platforms as well. Whether it's iHeart, whether it's Apple, whether it's Amazon, you just put in our name and Dr. Beitman's name, and you will find this episode. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.